That is how clear how it works in the tech industry. And you obviously assume in your argument that every company becomes a tech company. But how do you see this ripples across other industries?
Yeah, I'll answer it two ways. So yes, every company is becoming a tech company, and I follow this because I'm fascinated by it. You got a forklift company, and there couldn't be anything more boring than forklifts. If you think about it, they only do one thing: is lift stuff.
Right.
So you've got a forklift company now that has put in an Internet of Things sensor that senses where the machine is, what it's doing, how it's running, but how much it's lifting. It shares that data with the construction crew and the foreman and the architect in real time. They're transforming the way they build based on this data, among other pieces of data that they're getting. So this forklift company has changed the way that it works with customers now. They sit down and say, I used to sell this to you by the day. I used to sell it by the job site, but I'm going to sell it to you by weight. And we're going to be completely aligned because you need to lift stuff, and I sell something that lifts stuff. And what we're going to do is we're going to work together on the same customer journey. We're going to have the same outcome. The better you can lift and the better you can optimize that device is the better for us as well. And so we're going to work that way. So this forklift company now is setting up agreements with AWS and Google and Microsoft, and they're thinking through the construction industry tech stack. Just 1,000 companies competing in that tech stack, and how they integrate with all these 1,000 dashboards and everything else. And the millions of people in the construction industry are now looking at this as a key decision criteria. So that's them becoming a tech company. But on the other side of it, they have an ecosystem outside of tech. So when you buy forklifts on the job site, there's a number of things you go through as a customer, and I'm just going to make this up because I'm not that much of an expert, but you could go to Home Depot and rent one of their forklifts. But the argument is that's more of a consumer forklift. You're going to want an industrial grade forklift. There's probably a half a dozen companies that build them. There's a few distributors in your town, and you're going to have some sort of contractual agreement. But when you go through your first 68% of your journey to get a forklift, wherever you are in this whole picture, there's an ecosystem of influencers. Well, I would get this model, not that model. I would get this brand, not this brand. And on peer networks and on social. And I mean, everyone has opinion of everything. So who are those people through that first part of the journey? Because that forklift manufacturer doesn't get into that 68% usually. But what are they reading? Where do they go? And who are the super connectors that they kind of listen to through that first part of the journey? Who's giving the keynote at their big event? Who's on the front cover of their magazine? Who runs the podcast? Who are all these people? For that forklift manufacturer, those 100 super connectors are potential ecosystem partners. Non-transacting, but heavy influencers. Where I would love to pay money to incent them to mention my name on their platform. I would love to give them some market development funds to go and spread the word because they are the most connected people and the most people our buyers listen to. So I would love, this is the Kim Kardashian model, I would love them to do an Instagram post like with my forklift. I'm giving a kind of a joke there, but the fact is these people are now your ecosystem. It's not just signing up Home Depot or whoever's going to be your local reseller. It's my journey, my customers changed. And how am I going to influence the influencer? How am I going to influence my customer? And drop my name 7 times during that first 68%. So when they make vendor selection, 61% of the time, before talking to anyone, they're going to make my decision. That's the new ecosystem approach.
It's a convergence, basically, what you said, convergence of service economy, technology, influencers, and new buyer journey, which is...
And everyone joining on this customer journey. And the other thing is the journey never ends. So this forklift manufacturer now is on a subscription model. You pay per month, you pay per job, you pay per weight, whatever it is, it's a subscription model that's recurring. So the customer journey just doesn't end when that building is built. They move into their next building, they move into their, the people that rent forklifts are people that do this often. So they'll get into some subscription mode for this. And who helps retain that customer? Who helps renew them? Who helps upsell and cross-sell them on a bigger, better forklift? Are the people downstream who are now your partners. Your product needs to be installed and implemented and integrated. If it's a technology, it needs to be secured, especially for IoT. It needs to be governed and compliant. It needs to have some sort of business continuity. Who manages all this data? I mean, I could walk through dozens of examples of downstream opportunity for partners to go take advantage of.
Right.
And every company out there, by the way, in every industry has an economic value. For every dollar they sell in of their product that they make, there is X amount of dollars. I mentioned Salesforce was $4.14, but that forklift manufacturer has an economic value there for other ecosystem partners to go grab. It comes at a certain margin, there's a certain demand for those services, and all those other things that forklift manufacturer can help their partners understand in the ecosystem.
Right.
You should do this, this, and this because it is this margin and there's this much demand. So you should be the integration partner for forklifts on construction sites. Right. And then as a business owner, that's great for me because you've done the work of telling me where I should take my business next.
It's a fascinating story about forklift manufacturer. This company probably already had a partnership manager or alliance manager. How would you advise them to learn about best practices of managing partnership? What is the characteristic of managing partnerships?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, and I write about this. I wrote a blog once, so you want to be a channel chief. Yep. It's kind of talking about their lives. The one challenge is 80% of companies. I mentioned 75% of the world goes indirectly. Yeah. So if I look across industry, I look at pharmaceutical companies and banks and insurance companies and car dealers, and I look at technology companies, but if I look across all 27 industries, 80% of channels and dealers and agents and retailers, franchisees are siloed. They don't report into sales. They don't report into marketing. It's always, and it could have been for 100 years now. They've always been their own little organization off to the side. That is basically a go-to-market, routes-to-market department. Right. But it has its own sales, marketing, finance, operation, out on its own. So that the chief of that, the channel chief, has their own mini organization. The Harvard Business Review wrote a nice piece that said the best channel chiefs are actually look more like CEOs. Right. You don't want to take your direct selling VP, who's really, really good at their job, and make him a channel chief. Right. Completely different skills. A good channel chief is juggling 90 parts of the program and conflict and trying to be a mediator and psychologist, and there's a lot going on, and they have direct reports across multidiscipline. So it's looking like a CEO. Right. Now, with this new world, I'm telling you, it's actually very challenging for them because they're out on their own. They don't get the investment. They don't have the skills. So non-transacting partners look more like affiliates, advocates, alliances, and other types. Right. When there's not a transaction, you need to attribute revenue to them somehow. Back to the Instagram post by Kim Kardashian. How do you attribute your sales to that? And it's the same difficult thing in B2B. I've got this great influencer who has a great platform, who's in early in that conversation. But how in my program do I measure their success? And if I'm going to invest money in them that I talked about, incenting them or doing marketing with them, I need now to attribute revenue because I have to go and report to the board how that works. Right. There's very little people in the channel today across industry that know anything about attribution because they've now spent decades in resale channels. They know a lot about supply, distribution, wholesale, supply chain, how to make a resale channel, gold, silver, bronze, work. It's very linear and it's complicated, but most people get it after a long time doing this. When you introduce this whole new set, which could be 100% or 80% of your new partners, don't just come into this gold, silver, bronze model. They're now in this ecosystem. How do you measure it? How do you manage it? How do you report on it? How do you onboard them and find them and recruit them? How do you incent them and motivate them and drive loyalty? How do you co-sell and co-market? How do you do all these things? This is the key challenge they're having.